A compelling detective story, a cloak and dagger action, and a romantic drama, all these stories were taken from real life. The history of Kazakhstan is inseparable from the world history. Reflections on history, our version.
In the shot and behind the scenes. On the other side of the screen. Behind the scenes of television. The TV legends. Another time. A small cozy corner in the style of the 1960s. You can sit on a chair and watch TV. One of the most famous programs of that time was KVN. 3 people created it. It was named in honor of them. They were Kenigson, Varshavsky, and Nikolevsky. But people of the time jokingly called them as bought one, turned it on, and it doesn't work. The Almaty History Museum of the Jubilee exposition dedicated to the 60th anniversary of Kazakh television. Smile wider, you're on air. No matter what happens, think how you hold yourself. At first, TV hosts did not know how to greet the audience. The word viewers didn't seem to sound good. At the beginning, they said, "Hello, comrades, radio viewers," and then they got used to it and it went well. Hello, comrades, dear viewers. Today, we will tell you how television started in our republic, about the curious cases and interesting programs in the shot and behind the scenes. For the first time, I appeared on the screen at the Almaty television studio. And the journalist says, "Hold me." She wrapped herself with a lasso. They thought she would fall, but she fell directly from the helicopter. All were very ambitious, purposeful. I will even say cocky, because they would go on such adventures, and in general, they were successful. Chapter 1. On the other side of the screen. The aesthetics of television broadcasts in the shot and behind the scenes is special, and it did not evolve immediately. At that time, professionals referred to problems on air as heart attack or out of the shot. The hosts understood each other with just one touch of their leg. They would kick each other under the table if something went wrong. They would show like this at 5 minutes and left until the end of the broadcast because it was a live broadcast. To inform the host that they need to wrap up the broadcast, they would show it like this. Sign language is one of the most important things. Some did not really understand. And a story from life, a live broadcast. Alexander Golovinsky shares how he prepared 2 stories about a construction and drivers. Time was running low and the editor behind the camera made a sign. She showed me the sign to wrap up. I understood it. In my own way, I began to tell the story about the drivers. And then she waved her hand. "What are you doing?" And I repeated like, "Yes, what else can you do?" She was desperate and put her hands on her head, and I repeated and grabbed my head with my hands. And so I repeated all her actions on air. Firuza Pirzadayeva brought a film script about the ballet to television and began to make an informational program. And then, and now, the main thing in the news was to be on time. They gave you a camera person, and you would run to him and order a lighting engineer. The engineers would bring with them 4 lamp devices on a tripod. And they were really heavy and absolutely enormous. Then I would run down to the parking garage to see if I could find a car. And if there was no car, there was no way that you could shoot your report. The tape reel was also huge, and it was everything to us. The rules were tough. For a 2-minute story, we were given a tape reel for 4 minutes, and programmers often went with carts to do editing, says Alia Karamendina. She worked as an assistant to the director, and they were called cutters. We used to carry 10 to 20 kilograms of tape reels. On a business trip, we would bring 5 pieces of them. I was an assistant. They would order me to take 5 pieces. I'd say I'd take it, but I actually only had 2 hands. And all these cameramen's excuses, there's no lighting engineers and there wasn't much time, and what could I do? So the cameraman worked as prompters. The news was read without prompters on the air. Her first position on television as a kata, Maria Savina recalls how the announcer made a mistake on air. Watch 17 episodes of 12 Moments of Spring, and some camera person told him 17 moments. He's, well, okay, 17 moments of spring and 12 episodes. We had a woman named Anna Belusova. She was a journalist, and when someone was on the air, she wrote words in huge letters on paper and held it in her teeth for the host to read. In the bilingual information program, there were a maximum of 8 editors. I'm still amazed that only one person was preparing a release, so what else did we do? Report, then photo reports, then we came up with something like this. It was called From the Teletype Tape. Time passed, new editions and new people appeared with new programs. Moreover, some of them appeared even earlier than on Central TV. Zhakan Smarkov became the founder, the organizer of Kazakh children's broadcasting. He was inexhaustible on fiction. He wrote children's poems that, of course, were incorporated in the program. He invented Kazakh riddles and bedtime fairy tales. We were always a little bit hurt that many of the programs were created here and only then used on Central TV. Chapter 2. Behind the Scenes of Television. Live line on live broadcast. First one program, then another. We had 2 studios, one large, mainly for social and political programs, and the other quite small. We broadcast not only a whole concert, but in the small studio we produced chamber performances. It was such a satirical miniature television theater, and it was shot directly from the screen of this size. The pace was dictated by the TV itself. Childhood in Malaya Stanica, the Palace of Pioneers, a drama club, and the first performance on television. In the Almaty studio before the era of editing and recording, actor Alexander Filipenko. When there were live programs without recording, and in the Almaty studio, the cable masters who were holding the cable behind the camera, it was live broadcasts. And it was necessary, here you left the frame, it was necessary to run in front of 3 cameras and enter the frame from the other side. I had this experience in Almaty. When Filipenko first went on the air, there was no training for television directors. But Alexander Golovinsky, after 2 5-year plans, defended a diploma on the topic television theatre. Back in the day, the Kazakh television creative staff comprised 150 to 200 people, and to get to work on TV was a great luck. Alexander was lucky, but not at once. First, there was advertising, television. We advertised jewelry, detergents, and even some cars. We advertised all that was sold in stores, you know. Valery Korenchuk also worked in TV advertising. He recalls how one day a movie about culinary delights was shot at the fair. Golovinsky came up with the idea that Carlson would be the main character at this fair. And Carlson, more precisely the actor who played this character, flew over the fair. The tower carried the actor who played Carlson, and together with him in the cradle, the cameraman shot everything. The audience then believed it was the real Carlson who was flying in the sky above the square. TV performances were one of the trends of the time. Satirical content, innovative solutions. One of them was a production called Devil in the Picture Tube. I needed a frame to be upside down. So we got to the deputy chairman of the State TV and Radio of Kazakhstan for permission to turn this huge camera upside down, hang it, and shoot. An interesting story happened with this devil. The performance was supposed to begin on the evening of the 1st of April. Suddenly, Moscow knocked out all the programs and Gromyko's speech began. Instead of satirical performance on the air, the speech of the Minister of Foreign Affairs to the Soviet Union was scheduled. Valery Korenchuk decided to take advantage of the situation and play his colleagues on April Fool's Day. He called the television studio. And in a serious voice, I said, The employee on duty in the State Security Committee, televiewers, have cut off my phone. You were supposed to show Devil in the Picture Tube, and you have a member of the Presidium of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union on the air. The joke, of course, was exposed, but not immediately. Chapter 3. The TV Legends. Let's remember how it all began and how it continues to be to this day. There was such a legend that some lady sat for the first time in the console editing room transmitting everything on air, and she did not press one of the buttons and was very frightened and began to poke on all the buttons while screaming, "Not right, not right, not right." Self-control is one of the main qualities on television. One camera on the announcers, the other on the speaker, the third for the screensavers, and dimming the lights, which in translation from the language of the television means darkening. It is important for the director not to confuse and to press the necessary button on time. She mixed up some of the camera work with something that was supposed to go on the air, and she suddenly started to scream on the speakerphone in the studio, "Dim the lights, dim the lights." But in reality, she was supposed to be the one who pressed the button, and the lights would dim. I remember one of the cameramen, such a humorous man, it was in the summer, he took his hat off and put it on the camera and on the lens and said, "Dim the lights." Together with Galamjan, we traveled to Kyrgyzstan to help with the first telecast there. According to the decision of the party and the government, they brought from somewhere the oldest aksakal. He was supposed to greet people in the Kyrgyz language and congratulate them with television appearances. But he was also so confused that he froze right in front of the camera, and then he said some profanity, which went on the air. You made the wrong turn or said something wrong, or the horror, some technical failure. Somewhere before 7 seconds, it was considered a pause. If it was a minute, it was considered to be an emergency. No one can be sure that some technical error won't happen to them once the electricity went out. The automation didn't work. Television did not work for 27 minutes, and it was at a time when there was some solemn meeting in the Palace of the Republic. All the authorities were there. And it turned out well. No one had lost their job. Another story. Mysterious sabotage in the TV studio one late evening. The detective takes a security guard and suddenly discovers an anti-tank mine under one of the legs under the TV tower. He took it in under his armpit and brought it up from the street. Bringed it to where? Into the building, so to speak, and he began to look at it at the checkpoint. One of the tech guys passed by, and here on this table was an anti-tank mine, and he said, "What is that?" Because it could have blown everything away. They called a special squad. Fortunately, it turned out that it was a training mine. Students from the neighboring building apparently had made a joke. Epilogue. Another time. The caps were launched, the wires roared, and you never saw it. It was also the television slang of the time. For those who do not know, the caps were the opening titles before the program. The first TV presenter, the first journalist in the frame, all began in the 1950s. TV was mastered in the 60s, developed further in the 70s, modernized in the 80s. Only now, many television titles have not been modernized for a very long time, even at the Olympics in 1980. Is this a computer title? Well, of course. Here we put it this way on the music stand, and this was the beginning of the first half of field hockey. Looks like colored paper, as in school. Yes, they were drawn by artists. Sometimes they were not artists at all. One day, right before the airtime, the opening title was lost. Aliyah had to draw it herself. I took the paper, copied it with a simple pencil, and then in black and white I took a pen, an ordinary ballpoint pen. I've sketched it for subtitles and put it on the air. Yes, the time when screensavers were glued with their own hands has passed. Another era has begun. At this point, we are forced to interrupt our broadcast. For today, this is of course only a small part of what usually remains behind the scenes. Well, tomorrow will be a new day and new programs. Don't go away.